This video is brought to you by Opera GX. Opera GX is the very first browser made and optimized for gamers. We all know the feeling of your computer starting to chug during those intense gaming moments, and if you open up your task manager, culprit number one for why is almost always your browser. But this isn't a problem for Opera GX, and in fact, with its GX control, this is a browser perfect for enhancing performance on your PC, while still letting you keep open all of your tabs. No one wants to have to shut down their browser just to game. Thankfully, GX control lets you limit the CPU or RAM usage allotted to Opera's browser, instead allocate those precious resources back to your gaming session. And with its network limiter, you could even set a cap for the browser's bandwidth usage to keep your clutch moments lag-free. Now, if you're like me, you've been using one browser for years at this point, and switching over can be pretty intimidating. Luckily for us, Opera GX comes with an amazing import tool that lets you quickly bring all of your settings from previous browsers into GX. So have no fear, these bookmarks are coming with you. And if that's not enough, Opera not only has its own extension store, but is compatible with Google Chrome extensions as well. With Opera GX, you can go to the Chrome Web Store, select any extension, and download it onto your Opera browser. If you're not much of a desktop user, don't worry, the GX mobile app is perfect for those on the go. And for those that like to dabble in a bit of both worlds, the GX mobile app lets you sync up and connect to your desktop version. Opera GX is free to download, and you can get it now by using the link in our description. Your computer will thank you. Now, back to the video. You know, crazy enough, outside of the Toonami staples like Naruto and Zatch Bell, one of my first anime knowing what that word actually meant was pretty late into the game, maybe around 2012 when Zero introduced me to Soul Eater. It was this mind-blowing experience watching a show with a unique, pseudo-gothic aesthetic that I'd never seen before, a premise that got your mind racing with character ideas, and animation that felt more clean and exciting than most shows I was used to at that time. Soul Eater came into my life at a formative point, and in many ways you could probably source a lot of my tendencies in writing and art back to my time being obsessed with this anime. It created such an intriguing world, while still leaving enough blank spots that my imagination would start spinning about what my own Soul Eater stories could be like. And yet, despite how important this series is to me and how deeply I treasure the memories with it, it hasn't been something I've revisited too often as an adult. Unlike Naruto or The Last Airbender, which are among the shows I've rewatched dozens of times, Soul Eater is something I've put on only maybe just recently, and when I do, it's almost certainly the same couple of episodes every time. The problem with Soul Eater has always been a somewhat unsatisfying second half. My first time watching this show, I just chalked that up to shit happening. You know, it can be a real task to write 50 episodes of a show, and sometimes you just drop the ball. It happens. But well-informed fans of Soul Eater know that it's a little more complicated than that. And like as happens from time to time, Soul Eater encountered the issue of an anime that was being made faster than its manga source material. Like Fullmetal Alchemist in 2003, this led to a divergence in story between the two versions. This is something I learned about but never thought to investigate further, or hell to even actually pick up a copy of the manga and find out what the actual ending was. But then I saw this page, and that alone was enough to hook me, let alone this amazing art. The Soul Eater manga is insane, both in how the story unfolds and how gorgeous it is on a visual level. My name is Hoodie, this is Kato, and today I'm going to try and explain how Soul Eater went from a fond memory to one of my favorite manga of all time. The Soul Eater anime deviates from the manga in chapter 36. With 113 total chapters, you could imagine that leaves a lot of unadapted material that would be way too long to cover here. For the purposes of this video, I want to focus on one single plot line that centers around this man, Joe Butataki. And while I won't talk about every aspect of the manga, consider this a general warning for spoilers. Fans of Soul Eater will know this man as an advisor for DWMA's technology division with a love and passion unmatched for good coffee. Of course, that's if you remember him at all, considering he has a pretty small role in the overall story. But what if I told you in the manga that this character had nothing to do with technology, and in only the span of half a volume had one of the most narratively impactful moments of the entire series that would kickstart a murder mystery centering around one of Soul Eater's fan favorite characters? While Joe Butataki loves his coffee, he is far from a technology expert. They call him the Whack-A-Mole, and his introduction into the story is prompted shortly after the Brew arc when Lord Death suspects they have a spy somewhere in the DWMA. So let's set the stage. We have a mystery on our hands. Somehow, the villains are intercepting DWMA plans and beating them to the punch at every move. New players in the school include Krona, the 3 new Death Scythes, and Professor Stein, who's slowly succumbing to deep madness after his fight with Medusa. Immediately, the story leads you to the most likely suspect, Krona, a child of the story's most notorious witch. After Joe's introduction, we cut to a scene where Medusa interrogates the child about the location of DWMA's demon tools, and though they seem unhelpful to their mother's ploys, you can't rule them out of suspicion. Now, why is Joe the Whack-A-Mole? It comes down to his ability to interpret slight fluctuations within the confines of one's soul. In essence, he's a perfect lie detector who, with one touch to the chest, can determine the earnestness of those he interrogates. When interrogating Marie, he discovers some sort of disturbance within her soul that leads him to the conclusion that she was poisoned, and that poison led to the maddening of Professor Stein. And with that, it's all but confirmed that DWMA does indeed have a spy. Here's the thing. The readers know who the spy is. We know that Krona poisoned Marie's tea, and that started down the path for Stein succumbing to insanity. That's the case for the anime as well. What differs in the manga is that while Krona is in fact the spy, we learn that there's much more to be discovered. And that becomes clear when Joe Budetake is murdered. Now, it's important to acknowledge here that despite what an anime viewer's experience with Joe is, his death in the manga actually hits pretty hard, and it all comes down to his history with the Death Scythe Marie. Joe is a prodigy when it comes to soul awareness. Beyond the likes of Stein or Maka, this is a skill that Joe is uniquely talented in, with others even saying that they think Joe will be the first person in history to break through a witch's soul protect, which is strong enough to have eluded DWMA to Medusa's presence for her entire tenure as a nurse. But Joe's talent in soul perception is so powerful that he broke up with Marie years ago out of fear that one day he might unconsciously read her thoughts and let that affect their relationship. These two clearly love each other in every page they share, and yet Joe is a miserable person. He can't be with the woman he loves, and he's left in a shit job that forces him to doubt and interrogate his closest friends. The night of his death, he saw a glimmer of hope for his future in a date with Marie. This could be the very thing that sets his world back on track. A tinge of warmth in a cold, distant lifestyle. But before they depart, he leaves Marie with one piece of warning. Stein is not in his right mind, and you need to be careful. That night, we see Stein indulging in his classic cigarette. This is an omen of doom. When Stein started falling to madness, he made a vow to stop smoking as a testament to his willpower. If he could stay away from cigarettes, then maybe, just maybe, he could prove strong enough to stay sane. But on this dreary night, Stein was weak. There are a lot of tragedies in this event, one of which is a breakthrough in Joe's powers. For the first time in history, he has met the very claims many have held him to. On this night, Joe's power reached new heights when he broke through a witch's soul protect and sensed something within Death City that no one else was able to. But perhaps this is a power that you almost don't want to unlock, because when Joe realizes that not one or two, but 7 witches are within the vicinity, his fate was sealed. The manga flashes between every person who could be potentially tainted with madness. Medusa, Krona, Blackstar, the ogre within Soul. But most importantly, Stein, as he lights another cigarette. A flash of familiarity dawns across Joe's face, but before we know what he saw, the man is murdered. There's a knock on recognizable laboratory doors. Stein opens it to find Sid and Spirit waiting for him. Joe Budetake is dead, and Stein, you're under arrest. Now, as a reader at this point, maybe Krona is the one who killed him. Medusa was in the city, Krona is confirmed as a spy. In order to protect her secret, it would make sense for her to have Joe wiped out. And yet the story presents this as a clear mystery. It could be Krona. It makes sense for it to be Krona. But what if it was Stein? What if that cigarette was just the first of that night's indulgences, and Joe Budetake became another experiment for the mad scientist? That mystery doesn't last long, because in the next chapter it's revealed that Medusa was in fact behind the death of Joe. Stein was placed under arrest, but instead of prison, he's brought to a graveyard where Marie waits for him. It's revealed that despite lacking proof of his innocence, none of those gathered there today believe Stein actually killed Joe, and thus, they ask for a favor. They'll let Stein run away from his arrest, and in return, he and Marie will track down the murderer and avenge Joe. This kickstarts a side plot that runs in the background of the next couple volumes. What started out as a potential mystery turns into a monster hunting revenge story of a man slowly going insane and a woman hoping to clear his name and avenge her lover. But I pitched this plotline as a murder mystery, and the mystery is basically solved within the span of one page. We know who the spy is, and we know who the killer is, right? Think back to the moment where Joe broke the witch's soul protect. How many souls did Joe end up perceiving? 7 witches, and yet when Medusa counts those within her party, the numbers clearly don't add up. Joe perceived more than just Medusa that night, and with that information established, the mystery is back on. Now, who that witch ends up being isn't super important for the purposes of this video. The literal reveal is connected to another subplot that, while interesting, doesn't concern the death of Joe Budetake. But it is important tonally because it keeps the reader guessing at what is still being kept hidden as part of the mystery. Everything is laid out plain and clear, as if Krona and Medusa are the culprits, with them even saying as much. And yet the feeling of reading these chapters is that that's not the whole story, that there is a mystery still here to be solved. which is also why I think they frame Stein and Marie's revenge subplot as not just hunting down Medusa, but finding out who killed Joe. The atmosphere of the story is driving in uncertainty. Now, Joe dies at the end of Volume 10, and we don't end up seeing Stein and Marie again until halfway through Volume 15. While we were preoccupied with the battle for Brue and Avon, those two were busy investigating our little mystery. And in my first time reading this, what they found, as an anime-only watcher, was shocking. Quote, some entries in the top secret investigation report that Joe Budetake was working on indicate that he found a few puzzling things concerning Justin. I've done further investigating myself and came up with some interesting findings. For one, Justin Law doesn't have an alibi for the time of Joe's murder. That's right, Justin Law, Death Scythe without a Meister, one of the most archetypically cool characters in the story thus far, has been a double agent this whole time. As the guillotine wielder prepares to enter Death City, now known as a traitor to do who knows what, two figures appear behind him. They pull away their cloaks to reveal Stein and Marie in some true fucking JoJo poses. As the confrontation begins, they question why a traitor would be coming back to the scene of the crime, but they already know the answer. Justin Law was tasked with killing Joe Budetake because his soul perception ability posed a threat to his Lord Kishin, and only one person in this world has an ability that could potentially rival that of Joe's, Maka Albarn. The fight between these three is brief, but easily one of the most epic in the entire series. While Stein was touted as one of the greatest Meisters in the world for his ability to resonate with any weapon, it's clear that Marie was designed as a character with him in mind, both from a personality standpoint with her soothing aura to counter his increasing madness, and her combat abilities as well. Here we see her unveil an interesting technique where she sends electric charges through her Meister's body to increase their physical capabilities. This, in tandem with her lightweight, close combat weapon form, really complements the base fighting style that we've seen Stein implement, in which he basically just uses his weapon as supplementary to his own attacks. In his best Rock Lee impression, Stein blinks from place to place, knocking Justin around with speed and power that the Death Scythe simply can't match. And while it's only a couple pages before the fight ends, its beautifully minimalist display leaves you desperate for a round 2 where we can see Stein and Marie go all out against a worthy opponent. With the culprit identified and his name cleared, Stein is able to return back to DWMA a free man. And though Whack-A-Mole Joe wasn't successfully avenged, a haunting panel of the now evil Justin Law alongside this team of badasses reminds us that this is only the beginning. Now, I'd love to go into detail on who exactly these people are, but this video is already getting a bit long. Despite being a subplot in only a few chapters, I think the death of Joe Budetake and the hunt for his killer are a prime example of the tone one can expect from the Soul Eater manga. This series always had a gothic, dreary aesthetic, but it was often met with a comparatively lighthearted and fun tone to counteract that. As the anime and manga began to deviate, it was clear that the manga was going down a darker path, one of pushing these characters to depths the anime wouldn't touch. The manga revels in the failures of our main cast in letting the Kishin revive. We see that reverberate in all sorts of ways, including the temporary departure of Blackstar, the desperation of Death the Kid, and a total evolution of Maka. It's a fascinating story with breathtaking art to boot, and for that reason, I can't recommend it enough. Thank you for watching. Before I go, I just want to give a quick shout out to all of the incredible patrons over at patreon.com/KatoYT. We're super active in our patron Discord server, occasionally throwing some late night anime and movie watch parties, so if that's something you're interested in, pledge just a single $1 to get an invite. I also write and produce a webcomic called Romeo, Juliet, and Juliet that you can read over on Webtoons. You can follow the channel's Twitter at KatoBeyond, or my personal one at Hoodie_writes. Links to everything will be in the description. Again, my name is Hoodie Song, this is Kato, and thank you for watching.